A young, beautiful woman with her whole future ahead of her, marrying a man old enough to be her grandfather. Sounds strange, right? Was it love? A deep emotional connection? A once-in-a-lifetime romance? Absolutely not. Because let's be real, what kind of love comes with a life insurance policy? She didn't see a husband. She saw a jackpot. And when millions were on the line, waiting for him to die naturally. That was too slow. She wanted fast money. But what started as a clever con spiraled into a chilling murder plot. A twisted game of love, lies, and betrayal. And in the end, the woman who thought she was running the scam, got played herself. Greed, deception, and the hunger for wealth. She wasn't struggling, she was drowning in debt. She had the designer bags, the flashy lifestyle, the perfect online image. But behind the scenes, she was broke. Borrowing money, returning clothes after events, barely holding it together. And when she found a man who was old, rich, and obsessed with her, she saw an escape. A man who thought she was the love of his life. A woman who saw him as nothing but a payday. With the help of her secret girlfriend, she set the perfect trap. But in the end, the hunter became the hunted. This is the disturbing true story of a deadly love triangle fueled by greed. Welcome to Everyday True Crime, where we bring you the most shocking, twisted real-life cases. If you love dark, mind-blowing crime stories, make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Because trust me, you won't believe how this one ends. Let's get into it. Asia Harris lived for the spotlight every time she walked into a room, heads turned. She was a vision of luxury, stepping into high-profile events dripping in designer, carrying the latest Birkin bag, her hair laid to perfection. On social media, she was flawless. She posted from private jets, even if she never left the tarmac. She flashed stacks of cash that belonged to someone else. She dined at 5-star restaurants, only ordering drinks so she could take pictures of the place. To the world, Asia was winning. But in reality, she was broke. Her luxury clothes, borrowed. The tags stayed on so she could return them after every event. Her jewelry, fake. Cubic zirconia stones disguised as diamonds. Her social media, a perfectly staged illusion. And behind that illusion, Asia was drowning in debt. She owed credit card companies thousands, she had borrowed money from friends who had no idea they'd never get it back, even loan sharks were starting to demand their cut. And Asia had no real way to pay them back because the truth was, she didn't have a real job. Her entire lifestyle was a scam and it was only a matter of time before it all collapsed. Asia needed a way out, fast. That's when she crashed an exclusive charity gala. The event was invite-only, strictly for the rich and powerful. But Asia had mastered the art of talking her way past security. A little flirting, a confident smile, and she was inside, shoulders back, head high, blending in like she belonged. She worked the room, flashing her megawatt smile, rubbing shoulders with celebrities, influencers, and old money elites, and that's when she caught the eye of Winston Greer. An 80-year-old real estate mogul worth millions. A man with more money than he knew what to do with, and most importantly, a man who was immediately taken with her. That night, Asia saw her way out and she was going to take it. Winston Greer was everything Asia needed, old, rich, and eager to please. At 80 years old, he was a retired real estate mogul with money to burn and no one to spend it on. He had been widowed for years, with grown children who barely visited. His days were quiet, his nights even lonelier. So when he saw Asia walk into that gala, young, stunning, and full of energy, he was mesmerized. He loved her confidence. She spoke with charm and wit, making him feel important. He loved her style. The way she carried herself like a woman who had the world at her feet. To him, she was everything he had been missing. And Asia played the role perfectly. She laughed at his stories. She touched his arm when he spoke. She made him feel wanted. What Winston didn't know was that Asia wasn't looking for love, she was looking for an escape. She had spent months dodging bill collectors. Now, she had found her golden ticket. And Winston? He made it easy. From the moment they met, he showered her with gifts. Expensive vacations to the Maldives and Paris. A black Amex card with no spending limit. Jewelry, designer bags, even a penthouse apartment in her name. Asia had hit the jackpot. And she wasn't enjoying it alone. Because watching from the sidelines, reaping every benefit, was someone who had an entirely different plan in mind. Tamia Green. Asia Harris met Tamia Green long before Winston Greer ever entered the picture. It was at a high-end fashion event, one that Asia had barely managed to get into. She had borrowed a designer dress, stuffed the tags inside the lining, and walked in as if she belonged. But in a room full of wealth and privilege, she felt like an outsider. And then she saw Tamia. Tamia was effortlessly cool. Dressed in street luxury fashion, a mix of high-end designer and urban edge, she moved through the crowd like she owned the place. When their eyes met, Tamia smirked, like she could see straight through the illusion Asia was trying to create. They clicked instantly. Their connection was electric. Tamia was bold, confident, and knew how to make Asia feel like the most important person in the room. They started texting that night, and from then on, they were inseparable. Their relationship was intense. They were lovers, best friends, and partners in crime. But there was one problem: money. Asia had none. Tamia wasn't doing much better. They both loved the luxury lifestyle, but neither of them had the bank account to match their taste. That's why, when Winston Greer came along, Tamia didn't get jealous. She saw opportunity. At first, Asia played the perfect girlfriend, making Winston feel like he was the only man in the world. But behind closed doors, she was still sneaking off to be with Tamia. And Tamia? She wasn't complaining. Because Winston wasn't just spoiling Asia, he was unknowingly spoiling them both. Every designer bag Asia got, she got two, one for herself, one for Tamia. Every luxury vacation Winston paid for, Asia always found a way to bring Tamia along. Every shopping spree, every lavish dinner, every five-star experience, Tamia was right there, reaping the benefits. And one night, as they lay in bed in Asia's penthouse, paid for with Winston's money, Tamia whispered a thought that changed everything. Why just date him? Asia turned to her, confused. If you marry him, Tamia continued, the money never stops. It made sense. If Asia became his wife, Winston would be legally tied to her. There would be no more limits, no more asking, everything he owned could be hers. And the best part? He was old. It was only a matter of time before nature took its course. That was the plan. Seduce him. Marry him. Secure the bag. Asia played the role of the devoted girlfriend perfectly. She smiled sweetly at Winston, let him hold her hand in public, and showered him with affection, just enough to keep him wrapped around her finger. She started dropping subtle hints about marriage, about how a man like him deserved a wife who would take care of him. She talked about love, about legacy, about growing old together. Winston ate it up. It didn't take long before he proposed. The ring was massive, an 8-carat diamond that cost more than Asia had ever made in her life. She flaunted it all over social media, racking up likes and comments from people who believed she had hit the jackpot. And in a way, she had. Once the wedding happened, the real plan began. The idea was simple. Marry him, enjoy the lifestyle, and wait for nature to take its course. After all, Winston was 80 years old. How much longer could he possibly have? Asia settled into her new life as a new wife. She had full access to Winston's fortune. His black Amex card had no limit, and she spent recklessly, designer clothes, extravagant trips, expensive gifts for Tamia. She played the role of the perfect partner in public, but behind closed doors, she was disgusted. She hated the way Winston touched her. Hated the way he expected affection. She endured it, reminding herself that every second she spent with him brought her closer to financial freedom. But deep down, she couldn't stand being around him. Tamia reassured her. Just a little longer, she'd say. He's old. He'll be gone soon. But months passed. Then a year. Then 2. And Winston was still alive. Not just alive, but thriving. He exercised every morning. He ate healthy. He still traveled. He had the energy of a man 20 years younger. Asia was growing impatient. And then, one afternoon, everything changed. While searching for some documents in Winston's closet, she stumbled across a file tucked deep inside a drawer. It was a life insurance policy. Her heart stopped as she scanned the details. $3.5 million. She flipped through the pages, eyes widening as she reached the section labeled beneficiary. Her name was there. If Winston died, every single penny of that money would go to her. She rushed to tell Tamia. They sat on the bed, staring at the document, the weight of it sinking in. Asia was livid. We've been waiting all this time, dealing with him, when all along, this was sitting here. Tamia's eyes darkened. Why are we waiting? She asked. Why not just speed things up? Asia hesitated for a moment. Then she thought about Winston, his old, wrinkled hands, his breath on her neck, the way he expected her to play wife every single day. And just like that, the plan changed. Waiting wasn't an option anymore. Winston Greer had to die. Winston loved his evening walks by the river. It was his favorite routine, his way of unwinding after a long day. He'd stroll along the quiet path, breathing in the fresh air, watching the water ripple under the moonlight. Asia knew this. And that night, she used it against him. She suggested the walk, holding his hand as they stepped outside. She leaned into him, played the role of the loving fiancé, smiling up at him like she adored him. She listened as he talked about their future, about how excited he was to have her as his wife. She nodded, agreed, even let herself giggle at his old man jokes. But her heart was pounding. Not with nerves. With anticipation. The river was dark, the current strong. The perfect place. As they reached the edge, Winston paused, looking out over the water. It's peaceful, isn't it? He murmured. Asia stepped behind him, slipping her arms around his waist. It really is, she whispered. She pressed a soft kiss to his cheek. I love you. It was the last thing he ever heard. Before he could react, before he could turn, Asia shoved him. Hard. He tumbled forward, arms flailing as he lost his balance. His body slammed into the cold water with a loud splash. For a second, he disappeared beneath the surface. Then, he re-emerged. Thrashing. Sputtering. Asia. His voice was raw with panic. Help me. Please. But she just stood there. Watching. Waiting. Winston fought, his arms flailing against the water, but the current was too strong. He wasn't a young man anymore. His strength wasn't what it used to be. His head bobbed once. Twice. And then, he was gone. Asia didn't move. She stared at the water, waiting. Silence. No splashes. No more gasping. She had done it. When she finally turned away, she wiped her face, smoothed her dress, and pulled out her phone. By the time she dialed 911, her voice was already breaking. My fiancé, she sobbed. He fell in the river. I don't know what happened. Please, you have to help. The performance was flawless. Detectives began their investigation with no reason to suspect foul play. An elderly man, an accidental drowning, it seemed straightforward. Asia had already given her statement. She told police that Winston had gone for his usual evening walk alone. It was his favorite thing to do, and she hadn't thought much of it when he stepped out. She claimed she stayed in the house, scrolling through her phone, until she decided to get some fresh air. That's when she heard it. A loud splash. Then screams. She ran toward the river, she said, but by the time she got there, it was too late. Winston was already drowning, the current too strong for him to fight. That's when she called 911. Her tears were convincing. Her voice trembled at all the right moments. To any ordinary person, she sounded like a devastated wife who had just lost the love of her life. But the police weren't ordinary people. And there was one thing Asia hadn't accounted for, the security cameras. The estate was massive, she had not mastered the nooks and crannies of the place yet. Asia had only lived there for a short time and never truly paid attention to its layout. She had no idea that one particular camera, angled toward the riverbank, had captured everything. Detectives requested the footage, expecting to see nothing more than an empty walkway leading to the river. Instead, they saw Asia and Winston walking together, laughing, holding hands. Then, only Asia walking back. Alone. Immediately, her statement fell apart. The footage proved she had lied. If she had been in the house, how was she on camera leading Winston toward the river? If she had only come outside after hearing a splash. Detectives wasted no time. They secured a warrant to search her phone. That's when they uncovered the texts. Thousands of messages between Asia and Tamia. Some harmless, some playful. But others, chilling. They weren't just talking about Winston. They were planning. Weeks before his death, they had discussed the idea of speeding things up. Tamia had even joked about how much fun it would be to finally live in the mansion, just the two of them. Asia had reassured her that everything would be fine, that it would look like an accident, that no one would ever suspect them. And now, the proof was in their hands. Police arrived at the mansion within hours, ready to make an arrest. What they found confirmed everything. Asia wasn't mourning. She wasn't grieving. She was celebrating. Tamia had moved in the day after Winston's funeral. They were enjoying every ounce of luxury within their reach, the penthouse suite, the designer clothes, the fully stocked bar. They couldn't access Winston's life insurance money yet, but that didn't stop them from indulging. They drank champagne in silk robes. They had sex on every possible surface in the house. They lived as if they had already won. Until reality came knocking. Asia tried to stay calm when the police questioned her again. She stuck to her story, feigning confusion when they mentioned the surveillance footage. But Tamia wasn't built for pressure. Within hours, she cracked. She sat in that interrogation room, hands shaking, voice trembling. And then, she confessed. She told them everything. Not out of guilt. Not out of remorse. But because she saw an opportunity. She wanted a lighter sentence. She assumed Asia would do the same, take a deal, serve some time, and move on. But Asia wasn't going down without a fight. She stayed silent. She refused to admit to anything. She thought Tamia would stay loyal. Instead, she watched her girlfriend take the stand in court, and betray her. Asia walked into the courtroom with the same confidence she had carried her whole life. The same confidence that had fooled social media, fooled Winston, and, for a while, even fooled the police. But now, there was no luxury designer to hide behind. No staged photos to manipulate the narrative. Just an orange jumpsuit and the cold reality of what was coming next. Her defense team tried to paint a different picture. That it was an accident and Tamia was lying to save herself. She had loved Winston, truly. Why would she kill him? But the prosecution was ruthless. They laid it all out, step by step, text by text, moment by moment. This wasn't some tragic accident. This was premeditated murder. Asia had planned it. Asia had executed it. Asia had thought she was untouchable. The jury didn't need long to decide. Less than 5 hours. When they returned with the verdict, the courtroom was silent. Guilty. Tamia had already made her deal. 15 years in prison in exchange for her full testimony. She'd be out one day. She'd have a future. Asia. Life. No parole. No second chances. No escape. As the judge read her sentence, Asia turned toward Tamia, her eyes burning with betrayal and rage. But Tamia wouldn't look at her. She just stared ahead, silent. Their twisted love story, the lies, the greed, the lust, the murder, was finally over. Greed has a way of devouring everything in its path. Asia wanted wealth, luxury, and power. She thought she had it all figured out. She seduced. She lied. She killed. But in the end, she lost everything. No mansion. No fortune. No Tamia. Just a prison cell and a life sentence with no way out. Tamia played the game smarter. She cracked first, took the deal, and walked away with a future. But here's the real question, if Tamia had known Asia wouldn't take a plea, would she still have betrayed her? Or would she have stayed loyal? Let us know what you think in the comments. And if you enjoyed this case, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. This is Everyday True Crime. See you in the next one.